Good morning,
What's up, family?
Hey.
What's up?
Hey, Black Wall Street Times.
I had to roll back up in here with my gear on.
Come on, plug. Come on, clothes, outfits.
Yeah, right. This is a special occasion, right?
It really is, y'all. It really is. Well, we forgot to, first of all, say welcome, everybody. Thank y'all for tuning in to another TDRS with me, your homegirl, Tanesha, and my homeboys, Mr. Jason B. Allen and Mr. Nehemiah Frank. We talking that real shit every Monday, 11 Central, noon Eastern, and we back again today. So today is a very special episode. But before we get into that, y'all know we got to talk about anything that happened over the weekend. So anything that went down, y'all want to get into?
Yeah, most definitely. So, go ahead, Neil. You go first, brother, because we welcome you back in a sense too.
Yeah, I am. First of all, it feels good to be back. Last week, y'all know I had to go hiding. I had to take a break. I had to take care of Neo. I had to get through a lot of self-care because I had been away from home for a long time, working in Tulsa for the Centennial and all of that. But just to catch us up from, catch y'all up from last week, my last weekend. Man, we had the biggest Juneteenth in the country in Tulsa, which was dope. And I'm really proud that, to have been a part of that. So that I'm still living off of, that Juneteenth from, a few weeks ago.
Awesome. I saw the pictures. It was an amazing celebration. Definitely.
Yeah.
Amazing.
We kind of we went and got into this last week around how, Juneteenth is becoming an actual thing, for Black people to celebrate. And so we saw a lot of celebrations around the country, which is great. But also talked about the possibility or the potential for it to become commercialized by, Americans. So I was like, I don't want to see no white people out here in kente cloths and stuff like that. It's like, y'all need to chill. So if y'all don't know what to do, if y'all didn't know what to do this year or the years going forward, ask a Black person, because you don't want to offend us on Juneteenth, because you don't want your ass beat. But I mean, seriously. But shout out to the Black people, to our Black people, for celebrating Juneteenth as we should, but also remembering that there's still a lot of work to do,
And let me throw this out here for white allies that want to support Juneteenth, right? Find a Black-owned business, find a Black-owned business, patronize them, but then also don't just patronize them. Buy their product, share it with other people, encourage them to do the same thing. Because remember, with Juneteenth, the main ask should be reparations and economic equity, and that's how we gain it. Go to your local public school, buy some multicultural books of authors that represent the kids that are there, because we can guarantee you that they're not there. So, white allies, you want something creative to do. Kente cloth may not be it. However, put those dollars in the Black community. We will gladly take them.
That's a fact, and in the Black community and in Black activism, because plug for both of my brothers, Jay is running for school board. Y'all support his campaign. Neo got Black Wall Street Times up and running. Y'all support his efforts with, his publishing, with his apparel, all that stuff. So y'all can support that way too.
Most def. So over the weekend, I got to shout out all of the creative directors and people, like my cousin Nikki, shout out to her, who were connected with doing events for BET and Black-owned media companies, or Black-led or Black-owned media companies. The BET Awards, I thought, was awesome, my opinion. And, of course, the world, because, everybody's posting about Lil Nas and his performance. Ooh. And I said, wow, I got a little chill bumps. So I was like, man, they came and they let BT.
Hey, I felt people clutching pearls all around the country when Lil Nas X kissed that other man in the mouth, honey.
Oh,
I was like, wow, that was like a kiss too.
I was like, you better, Lil Nas X. I thought he was gonna do the video, right? And
Yeah.
he didn't do the scene, the actual like scene from the video. The video is very
This was last night at the BET Awards.
The
yes,
BET Awards,
yes,
So let me
yes.
just tell y'all over there watching that, y'all gonna have to get me caught up because I was watching Jordan Childs and Simone Biles.
mm.
So that's what I'm that I watched that all the way up until I don't know 11 o'clock when it ended. But yeah, so what's going on with Little Nas? Like, what? I'm guessing he did that
He
controversial
did
song.
it. Yeah, he did, and he did an amazing song. So let me say this: I was a teacher at his school in Douglas County, and my colleagues would be like, "Oh yeah, that's my student." Now I don't say that because I'm a special education teacher, and Lil Nas X was not in my classes. However, I really love the way that he is telling his story. Because what I do know for a fact is for him and all of the other students, not just in Douglas County, but in Atlanta and across the nation, who are not allowed to be themselves and are bashed and are told that they're not good enough and that you're going to hell and you're not going to equate to nothing and you are a waste of talent. Why did God make you? Like, these are things that I've heard teachers, whether they look like us or not, say to students. And so I commend Lil Nas X for being his authentic self and throwing back in the face of those who told him that he was never going to amount to anything. Like, now I'm sharing my message across. And I think it's something that really, empowers people to say, maybe I should be more mindful of how I treat people. So I wanted to add that part to the conversation as well.
And also just, being an example for any young people out there that are struggling with being themselves, to say that you can be yourself in public, despite the criticism, despite the judgment, all of that stuff. Like, be proud of who you are. You don't necessarily have to be loud with it, but be proud of who you are. And, love is love. Like, stop tripping, because I also thought the BET Awards was dope, especially the
Yeah.
tribute to Queen Latifah, Dana Owens, who I
Yes.
love. And also, I mean, the tribute to DMX and the performances, I thought they were dope. And I saw a lot of, social media commentary saying how BET is a disgrace and all this stuff for the things that they were displaying. And it takes me back to this conversation that I had a couple of weeks ago with people holding on to this back in the day mentality. And what we have to realize is that, we are evolving as a community, as a culture, and we have to accept entertainment for what it is, and really provide a space for nuance, because y'all might be in y'all car, the people will criticize, and might be in a car, dancing to Megan Thee Stallion, but when Megan Thee Stallion's doing her thing on stage on TV, y'all got a problem with it, and so it can't be both ways.
That's good.
And so it's like, stop living in this mindset that, these people are supposed to be Al Green and all that stuff. While I'm old school as hell, but we also have to provide a space for how our culture and how our people are evolving and support that. And
Most
so
definitely.
it's like, y'all gotta chill sometimes. It's too many woke ass people. Like, sit y'all ass down and take a nap.
Well, that's the thing. They're still taking a nap. They're sleepwalking.
Yeah.
Everyone wants to be woke. And here's the thing. Even with the, I want to say his name is Kevin Samuels, Kenneth Samuels, whatever it is.
That clown.
This is my thing to heterosexual Black men and women. I just go by people demeanors. I don't
Child, wait a
understand why
minute.
Black
Is he
men.
heterosexual though, child?
I don't know. Like, that's
Walking
my
around here
thing.
with
I'm like,
purpose.
maybe my
no.
gaydar is off, but I'm like, why are women and men
Baby.
listening to him and they're saying that he's been divorced twice? Like, I don't know. But here's the deal. It's all about how you present your message, right? And how you respect people. A lot of I'm bringing up Black women in particular because I'm going to talk a lot about Black women in the narrative of the LGBTQ community during our conversation, because I feel like Black women are strong, but I also feel like they get stuck and complacent and holding up things that they shouldn't. Why are we allowing Black men to talk to our children, talk to our girls, talk to adult women the way that they do? And I always get stuck with that. Black women are always talking about how they're independent and they're all of these things, and then they turn around, Tanesha, much to what you were saying earlier about, how people are woke, but they're really not. And so I noticed that conversation was happening around Little Nas X, and I guess Samuels made some type of comment that if Black women were choosing real Black men, that we wouldn't have Black boys that are acting like him. And,
Oh my God.
Black women perpetuate this and blah, 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 blah. And in my mind, I was like, well, first of all, when you did that first head roll, I was confused as to, are you advocating for him, or are you ashamed that you can't be who you authentically are? Those are my questions. However, people are free.
I mean, I'm guessing it's probably both, and every time somebody like, especially from the Black church, like pops off at the mouth on that type of nonsense stuff, I just, man, I don't know if they don't think that if they, I really don't even know how to take them, honestly. I don't know if, I'm guessing they don't see themselves as oppressors or echo chambers of like white supremacy. But if we bring it up, then that's a whole nother issue to the wokeness. They gotta prove their wokeness at that point.
But you know what, too? Like, first of all, Kevin, girl, Kevin, hunty, stop. You just stop. Because who are you to demean and degrade other people? And it's sad because I think that when we do have these people that are that oppress themselves and people within our communities, because they're fighting their own demons. And so we could sit here and speculate all day. I'm not trying to drag nobody out the closet. They insist on staying there. But Kevin, girl, I think you one of us, honey. So why you sitting here trying to go in on Lil Nas X? It might be because you really want to live your life like he's living. So Kevin, free yourself, honey. Come on.
But
the kids are waiting for you, baby.
Okay, I'm gonna be done off my soapbox. But here's the deal. Shout out to my great grandfather. I remember him sitting me down as a kid, and it's like, listen. You cannot be confined by labels. People are going to try to confine you as being Black. They're going to try to confine you to being this, or that. And so my thing is, people should be free to love who they love and be with who they want to be with. Because here's my reality. If I'm not being with you in that way, it doesn't matter to me who you choose to love. And so I always go back to that. This is what I tell my students. If that brother is gay, if that sister is gay, if they're trans, if they identify in this way, why are you so bothered and concerned by it? Do you want them? Are you disappointed? Are you feeling some type of way? Like, what is it? Because if you're not attracted to them and that's not what you prefer, then keep it moving. But people get so hung up on, oh yeah, you choose to love this person, so now I got to have a meeting about it, and we got to have a conference call. And I'm like, y'all doing all this? Like, you care this? You care? No, I'm serious, y'all. The church, they will do a conference call in the three-way in a minute, and I'm like, y'all care this much about who I choose to love, baby? You don't even speak to me.
Child, why are you so upset? On the house phone, honey. Right. They'll pull them house phones out and go to work.
Right. So that's my philosophy. And that's one of the things that I do with my students when we have these conversations around why are the older generation so caught up on this? And I'm like, really, if I could be honest, a big part of perception, how we want to be perceived as Black people, and you have to show up, dressed and, well-spoken and all of these things. But at the end of the day, I think America has proved to us that you can have on a suit, you can have on Timberland boots, and if the police or anybody else wants to shoot you, baby, they're going to do it.
Yeah, that's it.
Well, let's go ahead and get into it, because we already diving into it a little bit, but let's formally introduce today's conversation, which is say it loud, we're Black and we're proud. And I don't know if it was by design or what that me, Neo, and Jason ended up on this show. First of all, we're all Cancers. We're celebrating birthdays within this month. I just celebrated mine this weekend. Y'all,
yes, happy birthday.
Thank you. But then too, we all are in community, identifying as LGBTQ plus. And for me, that's big to announce that on this platform, because I'm not a person that is like, hey, this is where I identify, because it's not that I'm ashamed, but personally, I just don't think it's anybody's business, unless I have to, make that clear in some for some way. But we are, to close out Pride Month, talking about intersectionality within the Black community and the LGBTQ plus community, because I think we're in this era where we're proclaiming that Black lives matter, but sometimes within the community, all Black lives don't matter, particularly LGBTQ plus Black lives. And we need to really get into that, because again, it's contradictory to say that Black lives matter, but if you're not living your Black life like I'm living my Black life, then your Black life does not matter, and I will not advocate for it. And so let's get into this conversation, y'all. What are like some immediate thoughts y'all have is, in having this conversation, celebrating Pride Month, being Black men, identifying as LGBTQ plus. What are y'all feeling right now or thinking?
So let me tell y'all, I'm going back to this time last year when we were doing our shows and we did not do this. And I'm just thinking about the growth that has taken place because one, this time last year I wasn't married, and having a husband now, it's kind of difficult not to be like, okay, yeah, rainbow flag, I'm here. And to be quite honest, I'm writing a piece on Atlanta, right now that really talks about the struggle of being Black, male and LGBTQ. So I'm taking y'all to school today. I want to go to my wall and you guys can kind of see right here in this section, I have all, gay activists from throughout the years. And I especially or intentionally dressed up as Bayard Rustin, who is one of my favorites. I learned about him from my family and also from my first Black male teacher, who was not gay. He was just teaching us about this brother because of his power. And one of the things that I remember from Mr. Gordon is that Bayard Rustin always wore black, and he always wore a black tie. Now I have on a purple tie because he wore those colors because he didn't want to stand out to bring any additional attention because the leaders already knew that he was homosexual. And so I said, wow. Now he also wore buttons of things that he advocated for. And I'm like, my tribute to him today is that he understood his role and said, I'm going to endure what I need to ensure that the masses of the people get what they need. And so I want to shout out, all Black gay activists, LGBTQ, whether they are, film, they in the ballroom saying whatever it is. I definitely want to, shout them out today. So that was just my little moment in Black history. But also, this is what I do with my students because this is how I teach.
Can we? Okay, so I want to pause right there for just a second because you know something real big. So you said that Bayard Rustin, like you said that he wore black ties so he wouldn't stand out. So like today some Black gay young folks, they would clap back on that, be like, oh man, he should have been himself and he should have did this. But I'm like, the movement has still been the movement. Have brother men not like move strategically? Like, what do y'all think about that?
You got to be strategic, and it wasn't the time in the space, right? The allies weren't available. I'm gonna be honest, from history has shown us through Black publishers, and this is my other public service announcement, the Black Wall Street Times. I got to shout out Brother Neo because he represents those publishers, and those authors that are on my wall who did not have a voice. They did not have allies that supported them, and so when I talk to my young people about these stories, I have to be very mindful of the fact that they're like, oh yeah, why didn't they call this person? Why didn't they go and do this? Well, we didn't have TikTok. We didn't have Twitter. We didn't have Facebook. They probably really didn't even have email. So, I mean, you got to really think that these were different times and what they had to endure just to simply be seen as a human.
Yeah, and be accepted, not even be more than be seen, but be accepted, because I agree, Jason, like things are drastically different from the 50s, 60s, and 70s compared to now, where even there's this movement of this progressive movement around accepting people for who they are, but we still face so many like biases and prejudices and stuff like that. But given the fact that in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, up until now, we're still fighting for Black lives. And so it's like, again, for there to be such a tradition around how Black people conducted themselves and who was going to represent in the movement. Because even when we think about them choosing Rosa Parks over Claudette, so when you think about Rustin being in the forefront of the civil rights movement as a gay man, that probably would have been unacceptable. And so it's like, we need your brilliance, but we need you to be low key. And I think that, the funny thing is that we still see remnants of that today. Right. Like, we need your brilliance, but we need you to be low key. But we also want you to represent certain, we want you to check certain boxes. And that's something that I've struggled with in this educational advocacy space. Is like, we want you to represent as a Black woman. We want you to represent as a Black woman from the South Side of Chicago who went to Chicago public schools. Oh, now we find out that you date women, so we want you to represent all that plus LGBTQ plus Black people. And it's like, sometimes that burden of being the spokesperson for the movements and for the boxes is a lot. And so I
It is.
think that's the dynamic too, so it's like sometimes you choose to just be low key and push your brilliance.
That's good, sis. That it's heavy.
Man,
It is heavy.
yeah, like I had a situation. I was invited to the Oklahoma Equality Center, which is the headquarters for they support LGBTQ plus movements in Oklahoma. And I remember this white girl. She asked me. She was like, you're always posting about black stuff, black issues in the Black Wall Street Times. I'm like, of course. I mean, it's the Black Wall Street Times, right? But she had also mentioned, she's like, and I understand that you're a queer black man, but I never really see you publish a lot of stuff about queer people. And so this was about like a year and a half into starting the Black Wall Street Times, and I really got stuck for a minute. I was like, dang, you know what, you're right. And I think that it was that I was just focusing on, being a black person and advocating for black people, period, and not necessarily, trying to, move within that intersectionality. I just focused on all black folks. And sometimes, sometimes there was a queer piece out, sometimes there wasn't. It wasn't that, we didn't want to be like loud about it. I mean, that wasn't the focus. The focus was just black people, period. So, but yeah, interesting that you said that.
It's a lot of pressure,
They feel like they want you to carry that burden,
for everybody.
And it's like, do you know how heavy it is just being black? Come on now.
Or, I mean, having that privilege, right? I mean, let's be honest, like going back to high school and seeing, my classmates that were bold. Like I graduated in 2000 from Atlanta Public Schools, Frederick Douglass High School. And, some of my classmates I just saw, identify as trans. And I had no idea then. And so I remember when they came out in high school, like I was like, fine, like popular, in the in crowd, talented, gifted. And it was like, hey, this is who I am. And I remember like that was a major thing for us because people didn't associate someone with being gifted and talented and well-rounded and popular with being gay. And so the classism that comes with that, right? Like the shunning that comes from that. If you came out, at a certain time period in a black community, you would lose your social status. Yeah. And a lot of people don't, realize that. And to be quite honest, if you are, the girl built like Meg the Stallion or, Chloe and Haley. Shout out to Meg, right? Or if you are, the job, how people are categorized, right? Like if you, didn't fall into one of those categories, you were much like Lil Nas X and the kids that, knew who they were, but they were shunned and you get outcast. And so a lot of that pressure comes with people, not coming out, not being satisfied. And I'm gonna come back down this road in a little bit too, because I don't want to spill people's tea. But I do want to shout out our activists that held, people's families and households together because they knew, like Bayard Rustin, I know what y'all doing, which is a lot of the reason why you didn't see a lot of civil rights leaders coming at him because he knew the real tea. But shout out to those who not only cover our community, but cover other people who want to do what they want to do, but don't want it to be public.
But let me ask y'all this question. This is going back to Jay, when you said a few times that you teach your students this. One of the things that I struggled with last year, so I think there are a few parts of this, right? So one of the things that I struggled with last year was so many Black people pushing back against LGBTQ plus history being taught in schools. Ooh. Not understanding that again, the history, Black history, American history, all of the history intersects, right? That was number one. And the fact that it's not being taught, so a lot of kids, they don't know, they may have heard of James Baldwin, but they don't know about him. They may have heard of Rustin, but they don't know, his sexual identity. And so how important is it to have that representation, given the fact that there's so much erasure, of people's identities? How do we find balance between not making that label or representation solely like that represents the person versus like, I want to, we want to talk about everything that this person identifies with? Does that make sense, y'all? It's like,
no, it does.
Yeah.
It really does.
It's not like here's a gay man, James Baldwin, but it's like James Baldwin was this he also identified as this ABCDE, and so it's like the person then who they identify with, not their identity, and then who they are.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And I'll be quite honest with you. I don't think that I knew like Langston Hughes, James Baldwin, Bayard Rustin, others, right? I was gonna keep naming, and I was like, we'll be here all day. But I don't think that I actually associated their sexuality with their art and their craft and their gift that they have given to the world. Now, I will say that growing up in the 90s, one of my other favorite artists, shout out to Elin Harris, like he was very bold. And he was like, look, these are people that, that's kind of how I really found out about Langston Hughes. He was like, these are people that I'm celebrating and elevating. And I was like, oh, they were gay? I was like, I didn't even know that. But he was like, this is who I am. And he really opened the door, if I could be quite honest, for, a lot of people, to really be comfortable with who they are. So I totally get it, sis, having that balance of just simply being who you are without having to be labeled.
Yeah. Neo, what you got any thoughts?
I mean, he just said Elin Harris, and like that took me way back. And
yeah, y'all know I can't read it today.
Reading. I mean, like I really like y'all know my story when it comes to like reading and learning. Like I didn't learn to read until I was like in the 5th grade, struggled for a long time. But man, Elin Harris, his books, like I just read them. I went through that stuff like Kool-Aid. It was amazing. It's real page turner. And I think the reason why I read his books was because I identified with the people that he was writing about. And so that's why I enjoyed reading his books. And, it's the same thing when it comes to James Baldwin. He wrote about Blackness and the Black American experience. Never was a distraction, always focused and extremely strategic. But just learning about that one little identity, that one little part of him, that made me want to consume his work even more. And so I think that, it speaks to the importance of representation when it comes to education.
Yeah.
All of the history, because we never know what's going to be the spark that's going to drive the kid to want to learn more.
Yeah, I put in the comments, Christina Guillen has been on our show before. And, she's the school leader of Seven Pillars Career Academy that I have been connected to the last couple of years. And, in 17 years, y'all, Christina was the first school leader that really created an atmosphere that made me feel like, wow, my sexuality is not something to be ashamed of. Like she, as a heterosexual Black woman with the family, was like, listen, when we had the interview and she said, oh, you're engaged. And I was like, yeah, me and my fiance are engaged. And I told her, Dr. Raymond Burke, and she was like, I love that. And the next faculty meeting, she said, listen, this is a standard at our school. And I was like, wow. And then when the parents showed up, she was like, listen, parents, I'm not playing the radio with you all. Some of your children may identify as LGBTQ, and we embrace them, and we're going to encourage you to do the same, because we identify with ensuring that we're teaching the whole child. And we want them to be great regardless of what they may be labeled as. And that was honestly the first time I had ever worked under a school leader that really said, you know what, we are going to embrace all Blackness. And so I just wanted to shout her out for that, because there are not a lot of school leaders that have really created a culture where that's not something that's not normal. We are all human, and whatever we choose to do, regardless of, what that may be, as long as it's in love, then we respect that and we're going to uplift that. So I just wanted to put that out in the atmosphere. As Neo was just talking about education, that we definitely need to make sure we have school leaders that are going to do this.
So let me ask it. So let me first of all say that I think, again, the education around the history is important. And one of the first, because I went to school, I played basketball, and we encountered a lot of lesbian women playing basketball. And even back then, because I ain't gonna put my friends out there, but a lot of us, back then were dating boys, and now we dating women. No shade to my friends, I ain't name y'all, but it's like playing, basketball and being a tomboy, and we even because of how it was frowned upon in the community, we were even like, would go to schools and see these other girls and be like, what the fuck is going on, and just like kind of just talk about them. You know, and so that's one thing I think that needs to be combated when you talk about teaching the education around, you know, LGBTQ plus history. But another thing is what about those schools, Jason, when you talk about schools and school leaders need to really encourage these environments? One of the gripes that Black people have, a lot of those woke Black people, is that the LGBTQ plus rights movement has co-opted the Black Lives Matter movement, particularly when you look at, you know, the mission statement of Black Lives Matter, not international, national, whatever they may be. So what about those schools that prioritize LGBTQ plus or create space for LGBTQ plus students, but not Black students, if that makes sense?
Yeah, no, we know that we know this, y'all. Like, it's race matters in everything. So on top of the LGBTQ movement, you know, it's still fighting for the equity in the movement for Black people. Like, look at what has happened with Black trans women, like alarming numbers that are still growing today. I don't see news coverage about it, no news stories, no uproar, no, we need to respect all Black women, period. Because here is the issue. This is coming from within our community.
Yeah.
So brothers, my thing is, we got a lot of internal things that we, you know, need to heal. Like, this is coming from heterosexual Black men. First of all, y'all, I'm big on energy. You got to know people's energy. Like, I know when somebody is attracted to me, whether it's a adult male, adult female, or someone who identifies as LGBTQ. And I feel like most people know that, or they have some sense of it. And so I'm really concerned about these increasing numbers of Black trans women that are being attacked, and they're being attacked by Black heterosexual men. Women, I don't know what's happening. Brothers, I don't know what's happening either, but I think that we gotta address that, because what is making them, one, seek out these women and then to kill them? Like, is it being intentional, or are you saying that, oh, I'm cheating on my wife and I just found this out and now I have to, you know, attack? Like, I don't really know what the root cause of it is, but I do know from the reports that have been out, it has been the attacks, the assault. Those who are still living are saying they have been attacked by heterosexual Black men. And so how do we address that? Like, what's going on there?
You know, that happens a lot. Where I used to live in Inglewood, we had a lot of trans sex workers, actually. And you would see men out 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning soliciting this, you know, this work. Now in the daytime, these are some of the same people on social media attacking them. You will see them out in the streets. I was at a gas station one day and this man was just going off, and I'm like, bro, you probably went out there paying for it. And so I think that it comes down to them being ashamed of who they are, you know, and who they really are. And it's like, you live in this life when we talking about, you know, like trade and all this stuff. Y'all might get hip to some lingo today, but when you're talking about trade and being closeted, you know, those are the people that are, you know, attacking trans lives publicly, but in private they loving on them, you know. And so again, it's and it's so many different dynamics. It's because it's not accepted, you know. People don't understand trans people, and ultimately these men or whoever are sleeping with them or attracted to them or have these desires are ashamed to actually be themselves. And so it comes down to loving yourself and healing, and, you know, really rejecting the prejudices that, you know, that exist in this country and in our community, and being who you are. And so when we talk about unlearning a lot, and there's a lot of unlearning to do, and there's a lot of loving on ourselves to do, so that we can live happily in these lives. Because with all the shit against us as Black people, you deserve happiness and joy in some part, you know. And so if you can get that in loving somebody and that love looks non-traditional, I guess, then so what? Love them, because you deserve to be happy, and they deserve to be happy, and they deserve to live regardless of what you think their life should look like, honestly.
Most definitely. I also gave a shout out to The Chi and Lovecraft County. The Chi is on Showtime right now, and it actually is highlighting, you know, the grave issue with you know, human trafficking and Black trans women and sex workers, and we overlook that. And I'm gonna be real honest, y'all, in the numbers of kids that are not graduating from public schools, we always, well, let me not say we. A lot of people immediately go to, oh, well, these kids are the ones who are bad and they didn't graduate and, you know, they were just kind of prone to be criminals. But we overlook this very important population, which is our Black LGBTQ youth,
Right.
which just like Black youth in special education are disproportionately represented. These are homeless kids. So in the city of Atlanta, we are up to over 5,000 kids who are homeless. The majority of these kids, when we were canvassing even before my campaign to figure out what is the root problem. And when we talk to these youth, a lot of these youth identify as LGBTQ. Same stories. They don't come from broken homes. They come from home where my dad is a pastor. My mom is this. My family believes this. And, you know, they are coming from families that should be, you know, a quote unquote, this is a Huxtable. This is a, you know, a Winslow type of family love, and they are getting cast out because they're Black LGBTQ youth that are, you know, not accepted by their families and communities. And then they get thrown into the streets, which pushes them into sex trafficking and sex work, and they're not protected. And so when are we having these conversations? We're not having them at all. Not in our households, not in our communities, certainly not in our schools.
Dang.
So
I don't have anything to say after that. Like, good God, because it's true. Like, we really are not having this conversation at all. Like, I don't even think I've read anything really about it.
No.
That's insane.
But, you know, I do see a lot of, and I want to shift the conversation to the advocacy and activism piece, but I know particularly here in Chicago, there are a lot of organizations geared towards supporting, you know, LGBTQ plus students, particularly those that are homeless, so that they A, have shelter, and they B, have a space where they feel comfortable. Because, you know, Jason, as you said, we see a lot of suicides and a lot of, you know, self-harm, self-inflicted harm, and a lot of out aggression, you know, because if you don't feel loved and accepted and you feel that frustration that builds up, you're going to release that somewhere. And so that's where you see, you know, maybe kids getting expelled from school. You're right. We don't talk about that stuff, that the dynamics that lead to students being expelled. And one of them is that I have all this pent up frustration and aggression, and I'm going to take it out somewhere. And sometimes it's against your peers. Sometimes it's against adults that may remind you of your parents that didn't love you or ousted you. And so we need to definitely talk about those things, but also really amplify the organizations that are doing the work to protect these young people that feel like they can't be themselves at home or in schools or in the streets.
And protecting teachers. So I'm glad you mentioned shouting out organizations. So bam, I told y'all I came ready today.
Hey,
so
Jason,
I gotta shout out,
y'all.
Yeah, I gotta shout out Profound Gentleman. Mario Javon Shaw is one of the co-founders. I consider him to be one of my favorite Black gay activists of this time. This is his book. I had him on Atlanta and he taught this book up. But for Pride Month, he came out with a new book. And so he's going to be back on Atlanta this Wednesday to talk about the need for social emotional learning for not just our students, but our teachers too. And the reality is LGBTQ youth that are identified, you know, in our public schools who are Black, they're not getting supported because Black teachers, I'm gonna be honest, the Black teachers who are openly gay, they are very comfortable with who they are. And they're like, listen, I'm gonna be who I am regardless. But then everybody's not like that. Everybody's not there. Everybody doesn't have the same personality. And a lot of teachers, I include myself in that number, there really hasn't been a space for our stories to be told because every, you know, gay Black man don't like to wear heels. Now that don't mean that every Black gay man can't vote, because if this was 2005, I could probably vote you down, but I can't, you know, do that now. I'm in a totally different, I'm in a totally different space of my life. But I mean, we don't get to share our stories like that. And so I wanted to shout out Profound Gentleman that really supports men of color who are educators and they do identify as LGBTQ AI plus, and it's really important to have organizations that do that because we know that our public schools are not supporting us.
Right.
Yeah. Wow. So what do y'all? I'm sorry, y'all. I keep looking at my phone because I'm actually, you know, in the comments typing.
I see you in the comments, sis.
First of all, Jason, let me find out when I come to Atlanta, you got to give me an old nasty show, honey. I need all the face. But let's dive into the struggles that we've experienced as activists, Black activists, also identifying as LGBTQ plus. Because I, you know, again, we talked about a little bit earlier, but people expect you to carry all of these movements because you represent all of these, you know, identities, and they expect you to be the face and the movement. So what struggles have y'all experienced, and how do you kind of how do you reconcile those struggles to keep going and not to be just, you know, I guess this one person or this representative, knowing that people are, you know, it's they want to sensationalize it and stuff like that?
It's hard. You know, I feel like I have always been an activist. You know, I'm an activist for Black women. You know, my work with Ivy as I was advocating for Black girls. I've always been an advocate for seniors and grandparents, for children as a teacher, for Black boys and Black male educators. But to be quite honest, I've never been on the forefront of being an LGBTQ activist, and it connects to my story. You know, my parents were like many parents, and I've talked about this on the show, who went to the Black church. You know, growing up in Atlanta, I thought I was grown, you know, being 10, just following the kids, you know, on the block. And we thought that we were going to, you know, be gang members. And, you know, that's where my story started. And having been sexually assaulted, you know, due to gang activity, my parents did what most parents are doing now, and they're seeking counsel at the church. And then to be one of the youth that was molested by my youth pastor, you know, in this city, and in the, you know, early 2000s, it came out on the news. That was Atlanta's next biggest scandal, that it wasn't just, you know, supposedly Eddie Long, but it was 38 pastors in the metro Atlanta area that were molesting and sexually abusing kids. And so I felt like if I came out as an activist, you know, people would be like, oh, well, yeah, he deserved that. And we knew that, like, oh, he's advocating for this now, he's speaking out about it. You know, that should have happened to him. And I really am being very honest. Like, that is really why, you know, for so long, I never really felt comfortable being open, because I didn't want to be shunned for what I went through and then my story become invalidated. And so you have to find power in being able to tell your story. And I realized over these 17 years, how many young people and families were going through things that me and my family were going through, and they never heard this story. And so that is the other thing that really motivated me to say, you know, I don't have to carry the rainbow flag, but I can be open about who I am, what my struggle was, and what that can do to help other people. And that's hard to do. It's definitely easier said than done.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Wow, you did it, brother. Like, damn, like I was not expecting you to be, you know, I mean, how vulnerable can you get on a show? Like, this is probably one of the most impactful shows that we've ever had, just because you were open enough to share that. My goodness. And, you know, that's the reality. And like, you know, the Black church, like, it's time to have this conversation.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, about these pastors who really are, you know, aren't doing what they're supposed to do. Or maybe they are doing what they're supposed to do, and they just, you know, trying to side piece all these little young kids who, you know, don't necessarily have you know, the wherewithal to say, hey, no, I don't want you to do that. So I mean, thanks for sharing that. Like, I'm definitely gonna have to go back and look this up, because I mean, 38.
And definitely, let me say this, not just pastors, because it was the deacons, it was the mothers, it was the church leaders that covered this up. And I'm gonna be, you know, I will, let me add this, and so we can move on to the next point. Says, you know, I wasn't the first one that the youth pastor, you know, sexually assaulted. It was two boys in front of me, and you know, I could talk about it without getting teary-eyed now, because they're no longer here. The first young man, they were younger than me. He lost his mind, like just completely. They were not able to, you know, bring him back. Like, he completely lost his mind. The next kid, who was right before me, ended up having to be institutionalized. And when I found out about that and that he was still living, I actually went to visit him the last 3 years of his life as he was institutionalized, and his mom just seeing how it did a toll on her, sitting there, not working, just being there, thinking that her child was going to come back, and hearing her talk about how they gave up on us. Like, they shunned us. Like, her church members, Black people in the community who she grew up with the school with, they shunned her, much like how they did my parents. And I'm always thankful to be able to share the story, because I was like, that could have been me. Like, what made me different like what made me be able to, go through this without literally losing every fiber of my being. And so it's not just the pastors. The pastors are being allowed to do this by people who are overlooking these things and saying, yeah, well, as long as you're bringing this money in, as long as you give me these connections, as long as you're doing this, as long as I can do what I want to do and it not be connected back to me, then I'm all game with it. So it's always just in any type of scandal, I learned this with the cheating scandal and I learned it with that. It's never the first person in the forefront. It's the people that are supporting them from the background that are allowing this to keep happening.
But and it really goes to show the power of when you can mesmerize people. It's like you can use your power for good, you can use your power for evil, right? So it's similar when you think about the power that these deacons and reverends and the heads of church have over their congregation, similar to what the power that Trump has over these, white people and some of these, like,
and principals and superintendents,
right? So it's like
mayors.
How do you want to use your influence? And it's so many things that we overlook as a community. Like, first, like, I have a real gripe with the Black church. I'm not gonna lie, and which is why I lean more towards spirituality. Because I've had some negative experiences in church growing up. Every Black family had a church that they went to. And I remember going to church, and this is when I was kind of like trying to figure out who I was. And I went to a church, and the reverend literally was delivering a sermon, and he referred to dykes and fags in that sermon. And this was the same man who was beating his wife. Yes. And it's like, you wonder why so many young people are so disconnected from the churches, because y'all push us and them away when you use language like that. So we don't feel accepted. We don't feel loved. You are a hypocrite to what God's love is.
Yeah, that's good.
You're supposed to be, if you're supposed to be a prophet from God, or, a deliverer of the word, you are a hypocrite. And so that stuff like that turned me off from the church. And I think we really need to have a conversation about what religion is and who we should be following in spirituality, because a lot of these people are just like false prophets. And we're not having a conversation about, Jason, as you said, the molestation that happens in church and in our communities. And then people want to, again, deflect and say, well, oh, this person, we used to have a joke about lust demons. This person has a lust demon, in their spirit, or this person is promiscuous and that's why they're like that. No, they are being molested by older people. They are being destroyed. Their childhoods are being destroyed. Their innocence is being taken by older people who can't control themselves and are, pedophiles, molesters, all that stuff. And so that conversation needs to be had about these so-called leaders in our community that are not doing right by our communities, particularly our young people. Destroying them with acts and words.
It happens at home, then it happens in the community, whether it's the rec center, whether it's at church. Then they come to school, and then can you imagine that now the kids are hearing what parents have said about their uncle that's gay, and the auntie in the family that has the bots because she's a butch, back in all of the words that we use that are really derogatory. And then hearing students be allowed to say this in class because the teacher really goes to a church that's teaching them that, or they go, to an organization that believes, this is what, these people are. And now you have teachers and school leaders that uphold these same things. And so, I'm putting this out here so people can really think, like, I can't escape from it at home. I can't escape from it in my community. Then as a young person, when I come to school, my teacher is talking about, you gotta walk straight, boy. You don't want to be the sissy. You don't want to be a faggot. Like, and there are teachers that say this. I'm gonna be very honest, and I'm not calling out any school system because I don't want anyone to say, oh yeah, I know exactly who Jason is talking about. But we all, if you've been a teacher, you've heard teachers say the derogatory, oh, them just the colored kids. Them niggas ain't gonna do that. Like, and excuse the words, but we know them. So we can't be fearful of not using the same words that oppressors use against us. But yeah, it's happening everywhere. And if we don't have these conversations, when is it ever fixed? When is it ever addressed?
So let's shift gears a little bit, y'all, because one of the things that I wanted to, that a happy piece, as I said earlier, Queen Latifah has been one of my favorite people for a long time. And we all suspected, Queen, we was like, when Queen gonna come out the closet, but at the end of the day, whenever you want to come out, however you come out is your business. But last night on the BET Awards, when she was accepting her speech, she said, I love y'all. And she was like, Happy Pride Month.
Yeah.
Peace. And that just gave me so much joy because that representation again from people that have a platform
Yeah.
to make you feel proud to be who you are and finally accept who they are. And not saying that she hasn't accepted herself, but to verbalize like this is the community I belong to, that meant so much to me. And so who's someone in the maybe entertainment space or a public figure that inspires you or makes you proud in their leadership in the LGBTQ plus community? Yeah, I can't say all. It's too many damn letters on LGBT. That's why I just keep adding the plus.
It
It's
is a
it's
lot
the
of
whole
letters.
alphabet.
It
It's
is
the
a
whole
lot of
alphabet, yeah.
letters. But I would, well, Neo, do you have somebody that comes to mind? Because I'm trying to think. I mean, Queen Latifah definitely is one. Always have admired her.
Yeah, so I'll say like Billy Porter. I'm really proud of the brother. I know some folks got some things to say about
That's
Billy
Auntie
Porter.
Billy.
I didn't put something on my Facebook page the other day, and like all these church folks came after me. They was upset. So I just want to read the quote that he said because I thought it was so bold of him to say it. Because it was exactly what I was thinking every single time. And like I go to church, like I read the Bible, grew up, like it's a part of our culture as Black people. But he says, and I quote, "It's not the miseducation of not understanding that Christianity is the colonizer's religion. Christianity is what white people forced on us after bringing us over, stealing us from our own country. And they told us that Jesus told them to do it, and that we'll have a reward on the other side. That's the same doctrine that they're using to oppress another group of people. No, the answer is no." And so he was saying this in response to like, Black church folks coming after him saying that he was going to go to hell and that he should be dressing like a woman, yada, yada, yada. I just thought it was just
put a note on that piece. Put a note on that piece.
Yeah.
It's so powerful.
We
like,
need 5 extra minutes.
After me, they were like, "You're attacking the Black church," and and Jesus isn't white. I don't even know where they got this whole white Jesus thing from. And I'm just like, y'all, it was a whole mess on Facebook on my page, but I eventually just had to let it go. But I'm really proud of him. I feel like he recently talked about his status, as an HIV positive Black queer man, and I think that was just like, how courageous can you be? Like those, I feel, are the freest people amongst Blacks in this country when you can be free like that to tell your truth.
Most definitely. I know sis one. I'm gonna give my person is Nicholas Ash from Queen Sugar on OWN. I've talked about that show before. I love it, and him and his lover, they both came out together. And one of the things that he mentioned in the interview is that his most rewarding scenes on Queen Sugar were the activism. And he said that that's one of the things that inspired him to say, you know what, I'm standing up for this and I'm standing up for all of these other things. And I should really be able to stand up for people who identify with loving, the same gender as I do. And so I really commend, him for being young and acknowledging that there is pressure with being an activist and being outspoken about a lot of things, but definitely your sexuality.
Can we go back? Because Neo said one of the things that I call y'all, and when I'm saying like Auntie Billy and stuff like that, again, that's lingo we use within the community. So it's not like I'm over here, trying to treat anybody or throw shade. But this conversation, right? Because it was a whole thing with Dwayne Wade's daughter. It was a whole thing. It's been a thing with Billy Porter around dressing and letting your child do this, paint their nails and stuff like that. Can we talk about how we've been so indoctrinated in Western culture that we've gotten away from when everybody talking about, oh, I'm Black, I'm African, I'm from here. Y'all done went and got these ancestry.com kits and you proud to be from where, but you don't know the history and the norms of Africa. And so because we've been so indoctrinated in this Western culture, we've accepted the norms that say that boys are supposed to dress like this, girls are supposed to dress like this. We've accepted these gender roles, which rejects non-binary, identification now, and rejects anything that looks different from what we're supposed to be in Western civilization. And so we talk about, oh, you're dressing like a woman. If you have on a skirt, did our ancestors not dress that way? Did our ancestors not have skirts in Africa? So I wanna dig into that and like unpack that a little, because I think it goes back to us not knowing, again, our ancestry, our history, to say that what we see now and what we've been socialized to believe is right. And it's like, no, we've been doing this shit, but white Americans or white Europeans told you that that's not the way, and that's what we rolling with. So can we get into that a little bit?
Yeah, most definitely. You know, I can't take it serious because when I still look at, dollar bills, in the United States and look through a United States history book and George Washington and them still have on them wigs, I can't take anything y'all say serious because at the end of the day, y'all had on a kitten heel and a synthetic wig that I know, they had to be very careful with them candles because somebody's hair probably caught on fire a couple of different times. Like, I don't know how they were Klansmen and riding horses with torches with that cheap hair, because you can tell it was cheap hair by the way it looks. So I just can't take that serious when somebody wants to tell me this is how you're supposed to dress and this is how you're supposed to show up, when in actuality, like, they've been showing up the way they want to show up for years. So I just tell people, if you want to put on a muumuu and go to the mailbox, and baby, do you? It's what you want to do. It's on you.
Jason, you took me out, baby. Said George Washington had on them terrible ass wigs, and y'all trying to tell.
I mean, and nothing against Tyler Perry, but they had on them Tyler Perry wigs. Like, they did. They had them on, and it's like, yeah, we know we just doing this for a scene, but it's like they were actors. They were acting. Let's get deep about it. Like, that's what they were doing. They were throwing it on because they were parading around as if they were something that they really were not. Because here's the reality. We know the stories behind that. The infatuation, yes, with Black women, but also the infatuation with Black men. And the Black male physique has always been something that has been infatuated with white people, not just white women. So let me just make that clear too, and remind people of that history. So, when you go back through that, it's like, now you want to sit up here and tell me if I'm a woman, what I can do with my body. Now you want to sit up here and tell me, as someone that identifies with the LG plus community, like, this is who you should love. This is what you should wear. Like, no, I can't take y'all serious, because I just go back to them poorly designed synthetic wigs and them 2-inch kitten heels that grown men leading this country were wearing. I can't take that serious.
Click clacking around the Liberty Bell and everything, huh?
Click clacking is funny to me. Yeah, I mean, like, come on, like,
popping off them horses in them heels.
I mean, they were faithful to. They didn't even have a bonnet on or nothing. I'm like, they were faithful to this every day. They wore those hot wigs every day with them kitten heels. Come on, I can't.
And some of them were sleeping with men too. Because who was the director of the CIA? Not the CIA, FBI. What's his name? Because I heard he was sleeping with men too.
Oh Lord.
I mean, at the end of the day, it's that oppressive spirit. We all talked about it in our conversations, whether it's, in the church, it's in the community center, it's in the school, it's in, Wall Street, it's in, our society. I just really feel like it's not people's role to tell somebody else what they can and cannot do in regards to who they love and how they dress and, what they prefer to have for their life and in their life. Like, if you're not connected with that person and intimate with them, I still really just don't get and understand why is it so important. But when we think about westernized culture and that control mechanism, I have to control something. Like, I gotta, have this to be in control of someone else, then that's what speaks to it. I'm still not here for it.
We've internalized that Western culture, that Eurocentrism culture. We've internalized that as, displaced people in this country. I know time is ticking down, but I want to share with y'all. History, I feel like it makes me whole when I learn about history, beyond, the plantations and the chains and the boats that got us here. But it was Cleo Monago. He's a good friend of mine and a mentor for a long time. And he was the one who taught me about same gender love in Africa before we were colonized, and just learning about that history. Because a lot of folks, they'll say, oh, well, homosexuality and LGBTQ, that's all European. And that is nonsense. We are all actually one race of people at the end of the day. So,
yes.
There's gay folks on every continent of this planet except for Antarctica, right? But yeah, he told me about Kabaka Mwanga, this African king who had, he had a ton of wives, but he also had 4 male lovers. And he told me, that his male, like they were sexual with their male lovers, but Africa is such a continent, and creation has always been a thing. That was the reason why he had all of these wives. But he also told me about this this white man who'd come to his land, and this white man, uh, one of the 4 male lovers had been out in the jungle and had come across this white man, and this white man was a priest or a missionary. And the missionary said, take me to your king or something like that. And he took them, and then he found out that they were sexual, and so he told them that was wrong. And then King Kabaka Mwanga ended up killing the man because of his beliefs. He told them not to, bring his beliefs onto them. And so I thought that was like such an interesting story, that this African king, had sexual relations with men. But then also he told me about like these people that had like two spirits, in West Africa where, they were both masculine and feminine. And I'm like, hey, that's me. That's part of that is, I can identify with these, these Africans who were considered, to carry two spirits in them. And so
that's good.
That's powerful. And so, for anybody that's out there listening, if you have a kid that, may be dealing with this, or anybody, let them know that, our sexual identity as queer Black people, it predates slavery. It predates colonialization of America and of Africa.
Most definitely.
I think, go ahead, Jay.
No, I was just gonna say that's the importance of, people are so up in arms about critical race theory. And I've said this a couple of times on the show. We got to focus on critical race facts, because if we teach the facts, that's how we continue to make change. But also, it's smoke and mirrors to take us away from the point that we need multicultural curriculum in schools. That's one of the things on my platform in my run for school board, is that children want to be able to learn about themselves and other people, and not a watered down message. But they're not learning these things because we know that the curriculum in public schools is not multicultural. There may be some schools in the state, but there are not districts and systems in our country that have multicultural curriculum that would teach LGBTQ studies and Black studies and, Latina studies, et cetera, so forth. And so a lot of communities are coming together to push that. Sis, I'm gonna turn it back over to you, but I'm gonna drop my link for people to donate to my campaign, because that's what I'm running to do, to really change this for all of our students. But the students that are impacted the most, which are Black students, and then Black students that are categorized in special education, who are homeless, and who are LGBTQ, are under attack in our public schools across the nation. So what are we going to do to help them? So help me help them.
Yeah. And I think, we can just, I'll start with closing out, just everything that Jay said and everything that's been said. I think what it really comes down to is the education of the history, to that leads to, and I don't even know if acceptance is necessarily a thing, because you don't have to accept me. You don't have to accept anybody else that identifies as LGBTQ plus, but you damn sure go respect us. You go respect our lives. That's my position.
That's good.
I don't care what you think about who I date, how I choose to set up my family. I really don't care. And once you get to a point in your life where you love yourself unapologetically and you are committed to your own happiness and joy, you don't give a damn what anybody else thinks or how they feel, especially if they're not paying your bills. So, it goes back to the education. It goes back to unlearning some things that, we've been indoctrinated to, we've been socialized to believe and conduct ourselves. But I just want people to know that are watching this broadcast that if you feel like you can't be yourself, there are spaces for you. There are people fighting for you. There are people that love you, and so don't give up on your happiness, and don't give up on being who you are, because you are loved even if you don't feel it. You love from afar, you loved up close. And let's do better, to really teach the history and really teach love and really heal ourselves so that we can love ourselves and love other people. You know, all Black Lives Matter.
That's
Most
right.
definitely.
And that's all I got.
Yeah, I love that. I love that.
What y'all got?
This was-
Y'all,
I mean, I made my spiel. I'm gonna ask y'all just off
like I didn't
record,
close
like
out.
everybody listening, you know, backstage workers. First of all, shout out to everybody backstage working. But everyone, you know, go ahead and donate today. You know, we got to make change, right? So that's my final note. That's gonna be my final note every show. Support what, you know, we have going on here in Atlanta to really make change and to do it for our state and for the South, because we have to provide some better educational outcomes for all of our kids. It's for all of our kids, not just the ones who have access to, you know, other educational options. And so that's my last thought. Check us out on Atlanta this week as we continue these conversations to close out Pride Month. And much love to y'all. I love y'all.
Yeah.
This was a powerful conversation.
Yeah. All right, fam. We finna get out of here again. Happy Pride and all Black Lives Matter, and Black people get out here and do the get into good trouble.
Yeah,
We out,
most
y'all.
definitely. Peace, y'all.
Let's see.